What if I told you, my friend? Yes, what if I whispered a secret so wild it could keep you glued to this tale until the very last word? That Quentin Tarantino, the untamed maestro of Hollywood, the man who splashes the screen with blood like it's crimson ink, who weaves bullets and bravado into stories that sear the soul, was once spotted sitting in a hushed crowd. Picture him there, slouched in a folding chair, a styrofoam cup of coffee gripped loosely in his hand, the brew long gone cold because he's too restless or too intrigued to drink it. His sharp, darting eyes, the ones that birthed Pulp Fiction's twisted genius and Kill Bill's relentless fury, flicker toward a figure so far removed from his universe it's almost laughable, the Dalai Lama. Yes, the Dalai Lama, that soft-spoken sage of Tibet, a man whose every syllable drips with peace, kindness, and a stillness so deep it could silence a hurricane in its tracks. And where does this improbable meeting unfold? In Los Angeles, no less. Oh, Los Angeles. That sprawling, glittering beast of a city, where excess gleams like a polished jewel and broken dreams scatter like crumpled pages. Could it truly have been the stage where these two titans, these polar opposites, brushed past each other in a moment? Too strange to fathom. Oh, the sheer audacity of it strikes like a bolt from the blue. A director whose every reel pulses with the raw, intoxicating thrill of revenge. Think of Uma Thurman's Bride carving her bloody path to justice, or Samuel L. Jackson's Jewels spitting fire and vengeance, sitting mere feet from a monk who'd gaze at you with those gentle, knowing eyes and murmur, "Forgive them, my friend. Let it go. Embrace the world while you're at it." Isn't it almost too much to wrap your head around? Can you picture it? Truly let it bloom in your mind's eye? Tarantino, his wild hair a tangle of defiance, clad in that iconic black suit. Because, come on, he'd wear it even here, perhaps smirking to himself, a sly, lopsided grin tugging at his lips as if he's already spinning this oddity into a script. And there, ahead of him, above him, filling the space, the Dalai Lama, swathed in saffron robes, his laughter a tender ripple slicing through the crowd's awed hush, a sound so pure it cuts through LA's haze like a beam of dawn. Oh, what a vision! It's a scene so outlandish, so deliriously bizarre, it feels like it demands to be true, like it's clawing its way into reality, a twist so unexpected it could have been ripped from the pages of one of Tarantino's own. Fever dream screenplays, a clash of chaos and serenity that leaves you reeling. But wait, don't blink, don't drift away just yet, because the magic here isn't just the picture. It's the question it ignites, the mystery that tugs at your sleeve and begs you to stay. Did it happen? Did these two cosmic forces, one a tempest of violence and wit, the other a lighthouse of calm and wisdom, ever truly share the same air? Let's dive into this enigma together, with the fire of a philosopher chasing truth and the wide-eyed wonder of a child peeling back the layers of life's messy, magnificent tapestry. Stick with me. Unravel this with me. Because if you do, you might just find a story that dances between fact and fancy, a tale that sings of the wild, beautiful contradictions that make us human. And hey, if this hooks you even a little, smash that subscribe button and share this video with your crew. Let's get more souls lost in this mystery together. Let's step into the lives of two giants, two forces who've shaped our worlds in ways so starkly different they seem to orbit separate suns, yet might have once crossed paths in the sprawling, sunlit chaos of Los Angeles. First, there's Quentin Jerome Tarantino, born on March 27, 1963, under the wide, humid skies of Knoxville, Tennessee, a place of southern drawls and quiet nights he'd barely remember. Fate, or perhaps his mother Connie's restless spirit, plucked him from that cradle as a toddler and dropped him into the beating heart of Los Angeles in the South Bay, where the Pacific Ocean crashes against the shore like a restless dreamer, and Hollywood's humming dream machine churns just beyond the horizon. That's where he took root, a skinny kid with a mop of dark, unruly hair, eyes wide and hungry, devouring films as if they were his lifeblood. Not textbooks, not classrooms. Oh no, his education came from the sacred glow of a TV screen, from stacks of VHS tapes piled high in cluttered corners, from late-night screenings at dingy theaters where the seats stuck to your legs and the air smelled of popcorn and possibility. These were his mentors, his priests, his pantheon of gods, flickering images of gangsters, cowboys, and rebels teaching him the gospel of cinema. By 1992, the world heard his voice loud and clear when Reservoir Dogs burst forth, a heist gone gloriously, tragically wrong, a tightrope walk of tension and razor-sharp dialogue that made critics and audiences sit bolt upright, whispering, "Who is this guy?" Then, in 1994, came Pulp Fiction. Oh, what a thunderbolt of revelation! A sprawling, non-linear tapestry, woven from the lives of hitmen with philosophical streaks, boxers chasing redemption, and diner stick-ups gone awry. It snagged him an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay and etched his name in blazing neon across the Hollywood skyline. The Kill Bill duology followed. Volume 1 in 2003, Volume 2 in 2004. A visceral, blood-soaked love letter to kung fu flicks and the sweet, savage thrill of revenge, drenched in his unmistakable style. Rivers of crimson, crackling banter, and that sly, knowing wink at the camera as if to say, "You're in on this with me, aren't you?" Today, he's no mere director. He's a cultural tempest, a tornado tearing through the landscape of modern cinema. He owns the New Beverly Cinema and the Vista Theater, twin shrines to celluloid where he screens forgotten gems and timeless classics, a high priest tending his flock of film lovers. His 2022 book, Cinema Speculation, lays his soul bare, part memoir of a misfit kid raised by movies, part ecstatic hymn to the reels that shaped him, from gritty noirs to technicolor epics. But peel back the layers. Who is Quentin Tarantino? Really? Beneath the bravado and the box office gold? He's a loudmouth with a laugh that cuts through a room, a provocateur who thrives on pushing buttons, a man whose brain hums like a jukebox stocked with Sergio Leone's dusty westerns, Jean-Luc, Godard's cool detachment, and the lightning-fast chops of Hong Kong action classics. His films are worlds unto themselves, gritty as asphalt, dark as a moonless night, and funny in a twisted, off-kilter way that makes you laugh even as you wince. Violence isn't just a plot device for him, it's a lens, a philosophy, a heartbeat, pulsing through every frame. I'm not saying violence is the answer. He might quip over a beer, his grin sharp as a switchblade. But damn, it sure makes for a hell of a third act. Does that sound like a man who'd sit still, legs crossed, for a lecture on nonviolence, soaking in words of peace and patience? It's hard to picture those restless hands, that motor-mouth energy, bending to a sermon on stillness. And yet, here's the twist that catches the breath. Los Angeles is his lifeblood, his muse, his eternal stage. It's there in Pulp Fiction's greasy spoon diners, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's sun-bleached streets where the 60s shimmer and fade. If the Dalai Lama rolled into his town, preaching to the masses, might Quentin have sauntered in, curious as a cat, just to see what all the fuss was about? Oh, the possibility floats there, delicate and tantalizing like a half-remembered dream you can't quite shake. Now, let's turn the lens, shift the light to a figure carved from a wholly different stone. Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama, born on July 6, 1935, in a speck of a village in Tibet's Amdo region, where the air is thin and the mountains stand like silent sentinels. Picture him as he was then, a boy with bright, searching eyes, born to a farmer's life of toil and simplicity, his small hands destined for soil and sky until destiny intervened. The monks came, their robes fluttering like autumn leaves, their voices solemn as they declared him the reincarnation of enlightenment itself, the living echo of a lineage stretching back centuries. A child plucked from the fields and thrust into a world of prayer, study, and the weight of a nation's hopes. Can you feel the gravity of that shift? By 1959, the skies darkened. China's iron grip clamped down on Tibet, and he fled, a young man of 23, crossing the jagged Himalayas to India, his home lost behind him, his heart a refugee's blend of sorrow and resolve. From that exile, he rose as a voice, not a shout, not a roar, but a quiet, unshakable murmur, for peace, for Tibet's stolen freedom, for the fragile, resilient spirit of humanity. His Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 was no accident, no mere pat on the back. It was the world bowing to a soul who'd chosen healing over hatred, who'd rather mend a wound than strike a blow. He's roamed the globe ever since, this man in saffron robes, his steps light but his presence vast, speaking of compassion, mindfulness, and the simple, profound joy of being alive. The purpose of our lives is to be happy, he said, and those words land with a weight that's both feather-soft and mountain-heavy. A truth so elemental it feels like it's always been there waiting for us to hear it. Los Angeles, that city of frenetic ambition, has opened its arms to him time and again, like a wayward son returning to a strange, sprawling clan. In 1989, still radiant from that Nobel glow, he spoke there, his gentle cadence rippling through, a place more accustomed to car chases and camera flashes than calm reflection. In 1997, UCLA threw open its doors for 3 days, hosting him like a sage king. His public talk, a vision for the new millennium, packed Pauley Pavilion with over 10,000 souls, students scribbling notes, seekers with tear-streaked faces, maybe a celebrity or two leaning in, all caught in the orbit of his every syllable. Picture that throng, a mosaic of longing and wonder, hanging on words that felt like a balm to a bruised world. In 2000, he stepped into the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels, his voice weaving forgiveness into a city that too often forgets it, his presence a quiet rebuke to the noise outside. Fast forward to 2010, Universal Studios Hollywood, of all places, rolled out a metaphorical red carpet, welcoming him for a whole-child international gala where 4,000 people, including stars like Sheryl Crow, sat spellbound, drinking in his wisdom amid the glitz of a theme park turned temple. And in 2015, Anaheim, LA's scrappy, stubborn little sibling, staged a global compassion summit for his 80th birthday, a love letter scrawled in the dust of a city that rarely pauses to breathe. These weren't hushed, cloistered monk gatherings. They were wide-open invitations, doors flung wide to anyone, hippies in tie-dye, hipsters with ironic tattoos, Hollywood royalty draped in designer threads. Could Quentin Tarantino, LA's own prodigal son, have slipped into one of these? His black suit a shadow among the crowd, his restless mind snagging on a phrase or two? Oh, the thought alone sends a shiver down the spine, sets the heart pounding, with the thrill of the improbable. So here we stand, my friend, ankle-deep in the shadows of a tantalizing whisper, chasing a ghost that flits just beyond our grasp. Did Quentin Tarantino, that cinematic wildcard, ever sit through a Dalai Lama lecture in the sun-drenched sprawl of Los Angeles? I've turned over every stone I could find, rolled up my sleeves, and dug into the dusty stacks of history like a bloodhound on a faint scent. I rifled through news archives, yellowed pages of the Los Angeles Times, glossy spreads of Variety, the sharp-edged columns of the Hollywood Reporter, searching for even a crumb of proof. I pored over biographies, those thick tomes that promised to spill the secrets of a man's soul, and scoured the wild, unfiltered corners of X-posts and fan forums where speculation runs rampant and truth often hides behind a screen name. But what did I find? Nada. Zilch. Not a single grainy snapshot of Quentin hunched over a notebook, pen scratching furiously as the Dalai Lama's words wash over him. No casual, tossed off, "Yeah, I saw the guy once," slipping out during one of his sprawling caffeine-fueled rants on a Joe Rogan podcast. Hours. Oh, Hours of interviews unfold before me, Quentin riffing with that manic glee about the Godfather's operatic weight or Lady Snowblood's icy vengeance, his voice a torrent of film lore and trivia. Yet not a breath, not a whisper of Buddhism beyond. The shallow nods he gives it on screen, not the faintest hint of a Dalai Lama encounter. It's a void so stark it feels deliberate, like a reel of film with a scene snipped clean out. And then, like a phantom in the fog, a lone ex-post from 2013 drifts into view. A spectral tease that reads, "Tarantino met the Dalai Lama once." My pulse quickens. Could this be it? The key? But no. It's a wisp of smoke, curling and vanishing under the lightest touch. No date to pin it down, no place to anchor it, no shred of proof to give it weight, just a bare, bald statement dangling, there, taunting me. Is it a lie? Cooked up by some bored keyboard warrior? A fragile hope from a fan weaving dreams into reality? A memory misfired, warped by time and wishful thinking? The truth is out there, the X-Files promised us years ago, that eerie theme humming in the background, but here it's playing a maddening game of hide-and-seek, ducking behind every corner I turn. I squint harder, lean closer. There's got to be something, some flicker of light in this murk. Let's tug at the threads then, see if they unravel into anything solid. Uma Thurman. Oh, Uma, his Kill Bill muse, his collaborator in chaos, offers a glimmer, a faint spark in the gloom. Her father, Robert Thurman, isn't just some dusty professor with a tweed jacket and a pipe. He's a titan in the Buddhist world, a heavyweight scholar who's spent decades translating Tibetan texts, his hands stained with the ink of ancient wisdom. He's a close confidant of the Dalai Lama himself, a man who's sat across from the monk in New York, their voices weaving through deep, soulful talks about life, suffering, and the path to peace. Can't you just hear it? Uma, with that effortless charm, that magnetic pull, turning to Quentin one day on set, maybe during a Kill Bill break, the air thick with the clang of prop swords and the rustle of script pages, and saying, "Quentin, you've got to come with me. Dad's got the Dalai Lama in town." Picture it. They're in LA, the sun dipping low over the hills, the city buzzing with its usual frenetic pulse. She's got that spark in her eye, that persuasive lilt in her voice. He'd grumble, maybe, roll his eyes, but Uma's got the kind of charisma that could drag a skeptic to a sermon and make him thank her for it. It's not crazy, not impossible. Between fight scenes and rewrites, could she have hauled him across town to hear the monk speak? My heart wants to believe it, wants to see Quentin trailing behind her, hands in his pockets, muttering something about better not be boring. But the trail goes cold. There's no evidence he took the bait, no whisper of him stepping into that world, even for her. And what about his films? Sure, Kill Bill struts with Buddhist vibes, those Shaolin monks gliding through misty temples, the distant chime of bells echoing like a call to prayer. But it's all surface shimmer, all glossy style. He's not digging into sutras, not meditating. On the Eightfold Path, he's cribbing from the Shaw Brothers' kung fu classics, those frenetic, blood-spattered reels he devoured as a kid. It's cinematic homage, not spiritual yearning. I'm a filmmaker, not a philosopher, he might snap, his voice sharp with that impatient edge brushing off any hint of deeper intent. And yet, oh, that nagging yet that keeps me circling back, couldn't a mind like his, so restless, so insatiably curious, crave a taste of something different? A detour from the gore and the gunfights, a fleeting dip into the unknown? He's a man who's watched every frame of film he could find. Might he not, just once, have wanted to see what this Dalai Lama fuss was all about, if only to say he'd been there? The Dalai Lama's LA visits weren't quiet little affairs tucked away in hidden corners. They were loud, public, star-studded spectacles that drew crowds like moths to a flame. Richard Gere's a fixture at these things, practically the Dalai Lama's Hollywood ambassador, his devotion as steady as a heartbeat. Sharon Stone's popped up, All glamour and grace, her presence a splash of stardust in the mix. Harrison Ford's been spotted too, that rugged charisma lending weight to the scene. These were events that turned heads, that begged for attention. Paparazzi, buzzing like flies, gossip rags salivating for a scoop, fans whispering in the stands, "Hey, isn't that..." If Quentin showed up, black suit and all, slinking into a seat or pacing at the back, wouldn't someone have clocked him? A shutterbug with a quick trigger finger, a tabloid hack scribbling, "Tarantino at Dalai Lama talk. What's next? Peace. On Earth?" A random onlooker nudging their buddy, "Dude, that's the Pulp Fiction guy, right there." The silence is deafening, oppressive, almost suspicious, like a conspiracy of quiet cloaking what should have been a blaring headline. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, the old saying goes, and I cling to it like a lifeline, a thin, fraying thread to hang this fragile dream on. But it's flimsy, oh so flimsy. Each empty page, each mute interview weighs heavier, pulling me toward doubt even as I strain toward hope. Let's wrestle with this beast. Peel it apart like a puzzle box that's been taunting us from the shelf, its edges worn, but its secrets stubbornly locked tight. The claim sprawls. Before us, a sentence so simple yet so slippery, it demands we pick it apart, word by word, breath by breath. Quentin Tarantino, renowned director of Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill. Oh, there's no arguing that, not a soul would dare. His name blazes like a marquee sign over a midnight theater, the kind where the neon flickers and hums, casting a glow that draws dreamers and drifters alike. He's the man who gave us Vincent Vega's Cool Detachment and the Bride's blood-drenched Rampage, a filmmaker whose every frame pulses with a swagger that's become legend. In Los Angeles, perfectly plausible, as natural as the sun, rising over the Hollywood hills. LA isn't just his home, it's his sandbox, his muse, the sprawling, sun-baked stage where he's built his empire of celluloid and chaos. The city's in his bones, woven into the greasy diners of Pulp Fiction, the golden nostalgia of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's as much a character in his stories as any gun-toting anti-hero. But then comes the pivot, the shaky plank that creaks underfoot and threatens to tip us into the abyss. Once attended a lecture by the Dalai Lama. That's where the ground trembles, where the air thickens with doubt. Once, such a casual, throwaway word, tossed out like a cigarette butt flicked from a speeding car, yet it floats there, untethered, a balloon drifting high above us with no string to pull it down. No when, no where, no why, just a maddening vagueness that begs us to grab hold and shake it until something solid spills out. Could he have gone? Sure, geography nods its head. Yes, it's possible. Quentin's been stitched into LA's fabric since he was a kid, his roots sunk deep into the South Bay's sandy soil, barring that brief jaunt to Israel with his wife, Daniela Pick, a detour that feels more like a footnote than a chapter. The Dalai Lama's visits, 1997, 2010, 2015, dance across the calendar like bright spots on a timeline, overlapping with Quentin's prime years, that whirlwind stretch when he was snapping up theaters like the New Beverly and the Vista, churning out films that roared with his restless energy. Timing's not the hurdle here, it's motive that looms large, a shadow cast long and dark across the path. Why would he? Why would Quentin Tarantino of all people wander into a lecture by a monk preaching peace? Curiosity, perhaps. A mind so voracious, so insatiably greedy, for experience that it'd sample anything once, just to say it had. I've seen every movie under the sun, he might have mused, sprawled on a couch with a half-empty coffee cup. Why not hear what this monk's got to say? His brain's a vault of cinematic oddities. Spaghetti westerns, French New Wave, samurai showdowns. Couldn't it stretch to fit one more strange flavor, even if only for an afternoon? Or maybe it was peer pressure tugging at his sleeve. Uma Thurman, his Kill Bill muse, leaning in with that sly smile, whispering, "Trust me, Quentin, It's an experience you won't forget. A producer, a buddy, some LA eccentric insisting, "You've got to see this guy." Or perhaps it's the city itself. Los Angeles, that wild, bubbling melting pot where weirdos and wizards rub elbows daily, where a tarot reader might share, a bus stop with a tech mogul and a punk rocker might crash a yoga retreat. "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans," John Lennon crooned, his voice a wistful echo. Could this have been one of those random, glorious detours, a left turn Quentin took on a whim? But the counterpunches swing in, fast and brutal, landing square on the jaw of our fragile hope. His films, they scream indifference to serenity, don't they? Django Unchained rattles with the clank of chains and the crack of gunfire, a tale of retribution that leaves no room for mercy. The Hateful Eight traps us in a snowbound cabin, its air thick with paranoia and slaughter. Where's the compassion there, the gentle hand of forgiveness? His worlds are built on grit and gore, on characters who'd sooner spit in your face than turn the other cheek. And his public vibe, oh, that brash, unfiltered energy, that loud laugh and rapid-fire chatter, clashes like a cymbal against the Dalai Lama's quiet grace, that soft-spoken calm that could soothe a raging sea. Picture him in that crowd, wedged between earnest seekers and starry-eyed devotees, his foot tapping an impatient rhythm against the floor, his voice a low mutter under his breath. When's the action start? Where's the twist? It's funny, painfully, perfectly funny, a mental snapshot so absurd it almost hurts to hold on to. Quentin fidgeting through a sermon on stillness while his mind spins shootouts and snappy one-liners. And oh, the irony! It sings, it soars, it wraps around us like a melody you can't unhear. Tarantino's universes thrive on an eye for an eye, vengeance served hot and bloody, a code etched into every frame he shoots. The Dalai Lama, though, he echoes Gandhi's gentle rebuke. That leaves the whole world blind. A plea to break the cycle, to choose love over hate. Could Quentin sit through Love Your Enemy without rolling those sharp, skeptical eyes, without a snort escaping his lips? Or, here's a wilder thought, a whisper that sneaks up from the shadows, did he secretly need it? A balm, a quiet salve for a soul that spent decades wading through the dark, splashing in the muck of human fury? We're all searching for something. A wise friend once told me over a late-night coffee, her words hanging heavy in the air. Could this be Quentin's unvoiced quest? A flicker of longing buried beneath the swagger and the bravado? A moment where the king of chaos reached, just for a heartbeat, toward something softer, something still? But maybe we're chasing a mirage. What if it's a mix-up? A case of mistaken identity fogging the lens. Richard Gere's a Dalai Lama, Stan through and through, Hollywood's golden boy of Buddhist devotion, spotted at lectures with a regularity that's almost clockwork. Could someone have glimpsed Gere in the crowd, his lean frame and silver hair catching the light, and thought, Tarantino, in a rush of confusion? Or perhaps it's a rumor spun from thin air, born from Kill Bill's Buddhist flair, those temple bells, those Shaolin echoes, stretched and twisted into he must have met the guy, by a fan with a vivid imagination. Or, lower your voice, let it tremble with the thrill of conspiracy. What if it wasn't a lecture at all, but a private chat? A backroom moment, no cameras flashing, no crowd buzzing, just Quentin and the Dalai Lama, two souls crossing paths in some quiet LA nook. But that's a stretch, a leap that bends the claim beyond its shape. It says lecture, bold, and public. A word that conjures packed halls and amplified voices, not hushed whispers behind closed doors. We're grasping at straws here, reaching for glimmers in the dust, but oh, how they glitter, how they catch the light and tease us with their fleeting shine. Let's run with it. Let's chase this wild, improbable dream down the rabbit hole and see where it leads. Because what if it's true? What if Quentin Tarantino, that untamed spirit of Hollywood's fevered imagination, really did plant himself at that 2010 Universal Studios shindig, a place where roller coasters rumble and movie magic hums in the air? Picture him there, sprawled across a folding chair like it's a throne he's too cool to care about, his black suit rumpled and creased from a day or a lifetime of restless motion, those dark shades perched stubbornly on his nose because, of course, he's Quentin Tarantino, and indoors or out, he's got to wear the armor of his own myth. The crowd buzzes around him, a sea of 4,000 souls packed into this surreal venue, part theme park, part temple, drawn by the promise of something rare, something transcendent. And there, beside him, Uma Thurman leans in close, her presence a quiet tether to his chaos, her voice a soft nudge cutting through his whirlwind thoughts. "Pay attention, Quentin, this is good." Uma, his Kill Bill muse, the woman who danced through his blood-soaked vision with a katana in hand. Could she be the one who dragged him here, her gentle insistence pulling him into this orbit of calm? Up on the stage, the Dalai Lama stands, a figure so unassuming yet so radiant, all smiles and simplicity. His saffron robes a splash of sunrise against the sterile backdrop. His words flow out, warm and steady. A sermon on compassion that ripples through the air like a river winding through a desert. Peace, kindness, a call to see the world not as a battlefield but as a garden. And Quentin? Oh, Quentin's brain is spinning, always spinning, a reel that never stops turning. He's scribbling in his mind, maybe even on a napkin if he's got one handy, a script taking shape. Monk walks into a bar, says peace, gets a beer bottle smashed over his head. He'd laugh at himself, wouldn't he? That sharp, barking laugh echoing in his skull, a private joke at the absurdity of it all. But then, just maybe, something sticks. A tiny seed, a whisper of an idea, lodging itself in the restless, fertile soil of his imagination. The mind is everything. What you think, you become, Buddha once said, his words carried down through centuries. Could a flicker of that ancient truth have sparked in Quentin, even for a fleeting second, a glow he'd never admit to seeing? What would it mean if this moment were real, if this improbable crossing of paths actually happened? Would it peel back a layer of Quentin Tarantino we've never glimpsed, a hidden depth beneath the brash, kinetic surface we all know so well? He's always been the swaggering showman, the guy who struts through Hollywood with a grin and a gunfight in every frame, all bravado and biting wit. But what if, beneath that, there's a secret craving for stillness, a quiet hunger for something softer than the chaos he commands? Imagine it. Hollywood's wild child, the Prince of Pulp, sitting face to face, or at least row to face, with Tibet's wise elder, the Dalai Lama, a man whose every breath seems to exhale peace, and Los Angeles, that glorious, sprawling mess of a city where palm trees sway over traffic jams and dreamers chase shadows, playing matchmaker, threading these two opposites together in a moment that feels like a cosmic joke or a divine wink. Opposites attract, the old cliché chirps, but this feels bigger, grander, a mirror held up to life itself, reflecting the way chaos and calm can coexist, not just side by side but intertwined, each sharpening the other's edges. Could this encounter have left a mark, however faint, on Quentin's work? Think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that 2019 love letter to a fading LA, its golden hues and wistful glow a departure from the brutal, breakneck pace of his earlier bloodbaths. It's softer, less jagged, a story that lingers in the quiet spaces between the action. Could there be a Dalai Lama echo in there? A whisper of compassion woven into the nostalgia? Probably not really. But oh, how it teases the heart, how it dances at the edge of possibility. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. Annie's Nin wrote, her words a haunting lens. Maybe Quentin saw something in that lecture we'll never guess, a reflection of his own restless soul refracted through the monk's serene gaze, a glimmer he carried away without ever speaking its name. Step into the scene. Let it unfold like a film in your mind. 4,000 faces turned toward the stage, a mosaic of strangers bound by a shared moment, their breaths rising and falling in the warm California air. The Dalai Lama's voice flows like a river of calm, steady, and clear, cutting through the hum of the crowd, through the distant rumble of Universal's rides, through the static of a city that never sleeps. His words are simple: love, forgiveness, the beauty of being alive. But they land with a weight that fills the space, a gravity that pulls you in whether you're ready or not. And there's Quentin, restless, brilliant Quentin, caught in the tide, his fingers twitching as if itching for a pen, a camera, anything to capture the spark flickering in his head. He's not scribbling for salvation. Oh no, that's not his game. He's scribbling for inspiration, for the next wild idea, the next twist to toss into his cinematic stew. Maybe he's picturing the Dalai Lama as a character, robes billowing, a quiet smirk, stepping into a Tarantino-esque standoff with a quip instead of a gun. Or maybe he's just soaking it in, letting the rhythm of the words mingle with the rhythm of his own thoughts. A rare pause in a life that's always racing at double speed. The crowd doesn't notice him. No one snaps a photo. No flashbulbs pop to freeze him in the frame. He's a shadow among the masses, a figure who could slip out unnoticed, back to his world of reels and rants, his theaters and his late-night editing binges. Uma might nudge him as they leave, a teasing, "So, what'd you think?" met with a shrug and a grin. Not bad, not bad. But there's a glint in his eye, a secret he keeps to himself. It's a vignette too perfect, too ephemeral. Like life itself, a fleeting scene that plays out in the quiet corners of memory, gone before you can pin it down, leaving only the echo of what might have been. So here we are, standing at the crossroads of this winding, whimsical chase, peering through the haze to find where we land after all our wondering and wandering. Where does the trail end? It's possible, it's tantalizingly possible, that Quentin Tarantino and the Dalai Lama crossed paths, their worlds tethered by the sprawling, sunlit threads of Los Angeles, that city of dreamers and doers where anything can happen under the right alignment of stars. The geography sings yes. The timelines hum in harmony. Quentin's deep roots in LA's soil, the Dalai Lama's pilgrimages to its stages, the years stacking up like a deck of cards shuffled just so. It could have happened, couldn't it? The pieces fit, the edges brush close enough to touch. But here's the ache, the quiet sting that settles in. It's unproven, a melody without a chorus, a story without a spine. I've scoured the archives, flipped through every dog-eared page I could find, newspapers, magazines, dusty biographies, searching for a single scrap to cling to, a breadcrumb to follow home. No article waves a flag of confirmation, no anecdote slips from the lips of a friend or a fan, no offhand "I was there" spills from Quentin's own restless tongue in one of his sprawling, film-soaked rants. Even the fans, those tireless chroniclers of celebrity lore, offer nothing but silence. No blurry photo snapped from the back row, no excited whisper passed along in a crowded bar. The lack of specifics. When did this happen? Where did the seats creak under him? Tilts the whole thing toward myth, a shimmering mirage that dances just out of reach. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Oscar Wilde warned us long ago, his voice a wry echo across the years, and this feels like he's whispering in my ear now. A half-dreamt tale, gorgeous in its fleeting beauty but ghostly in its elusiveness, a shadow that slips through my fingers the harder I try to hold it. Oh, I want it to be real. Don't you feel that same tug, that same shiver of longing? This collision of fire and water, this meeting of Quentin's blazing, chaotic spark and the Dalai Lama's cool, steady stream, it's a union too poetic, too perfect to let go of easily. I can almost see it, the wild-haired director, all kinetic, energy, and sharp edges, sitting in the glow of a monk whose calm could hush a storm, their worlds clashing and blending in a moment that feels like it should have been. I want to believe in it, to wrap it close like a favorite coat against the chill of doubt, to let it live in the warm corners of my imagination where the impossible feels true. But without a shred of evidence, no ticket stub tucked in a drawer, no faded program with his name scribbled in the margins, it's a maybe I'll cradle tenderly, gingerly, as if it's a fragile thing that might shatter under too much. Hope. Skepticism creeps in. A quiet guest I can't quite shoo away, its voice murmuring that this might be nothing more than a lovely fiction, a tale we've spun from threads of wishful thinking. And yet, even as I doubt, I hold it. Because some stories don't need proof to breathe. Some what-ifs are worth cherishing for the way they stir the soul. If you've got more to offer, a date scratched on a napkin, a venue whispered by a friend, I'd dive deeper, plunge, head first into the chase with the fervor of a detective on the cusp of a breakthrough. I'd follow that thread to the ends of the earth, through every back alley of LA, every forgotten archive, until I could pin this ghost to the wall and call it fact. Give me a year, 1997, 2010, 2015, and I'd scour the records of UCLA's Pauley Pavilion, Universal Studios' grand halls, Anaheim's dusty stages, hunting for a sign, a trace, a flicker of Quentin in the crowd. Give me a place, the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels, a borrowed theater, a sunlit plaza, and I'd paint the scene in vivid strokes, chasing every shadow until it yielded truth. But for now, without that lifeline, it remains a curiosity, a delicate what-if that lingers in the air like cigarette smoke curling in a dimly lit room. There, one moment, thick and heady, then gone the next, dissolving into the ether with a sigh. It's a farewell I offer reluctantly, my hand hovering over the page as if I could will one more clue into being, one more whisper to keep the dream alive. But the silence holds, and so I let it drift, half myth, half memory, a bittersweet echo that fades but never fully leaves, a story I'll carry like a keepsake even as I turn the light low and step away. Oh, how I adore this image, how it wraps around my heart and squeezes tight, an image so vivid, so alive, it sings to me like a melody I've known forever yet can't quite place. Quentin Tarantino, the Prince of Pulp, the crowned maestro of Hollywood's gritty, blood-streaked underbelly, meeting the Dalai Lama, the poet of peace whose words fall soft as snow on a restless world. Can you feel it too, that electric hum, that shiver down the spine? It's a clash that pulses with the raw, messy contradictions of life itself. Violence crashing headlong into grace, noise wrestling with silence, the dazzling, hollow glitz of Hollywood scraping against the timeless, weathered heights of Tibet's ancient wisdom. Picture it for a moment longer, let it bloom in your mind's eye. Quentin, all sharp edges and restless energy, his wild hair a crown of chaos, his black suit a uniform of defiance, standing, or maybe slouching, in the presence of a man whose saffron robes seemed to carry the weight of centuries, whose gentle laughter could hush a city's roar. It's a scene that feels too big, too bold, too beautifully strange to be contained, a collision of worlds so improbable it dances on the edge of myth. And yet, even if it's fiction, even if it's a tale spun from the threads of our collective longing, it feels true, achingly, achingly true, in that deep, human way that catches in your throat and won't let go. Isn't that what stories do? They remind us we're all stumbling, tripping, fumbling towards something, some glimmer of meaning, some spark of connection, even when we don't know what it is, even when the path is shrouded in fog and the destination a mystery we'll never fully unravel. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes, Marcel Proust wrote, his words a lantern swung high above the dark, and oh, how they light up this moment for me. Maybe that's the gift here. Not cold, hard fact chiseled into stone, not a date or a place I can pin to a map, but a vision, a lens, a way of seeing that shifts the world just a fraction and makes it shimmer anew. Did Quentin go? Did he plant? Himself in that crowd, his foot tapping an impatient rhythm while the Dalai Lama's voice wove its quiet magic? Did he listen? Really listen? His restless mind snagging on a phrase like a fish on a hook? Or did he let it wash over him like background noise, a soundtrack to his own racing thoughts? Did he care, even for a fleeting second, letting that calm seep into the cracks of his chaos? Or did he shrug it off with a smirk and a quip, already plotting his next shootout? I don't know. I may never know. But I'll keep squinting at the horizon, peering through the dusk with eyes wide and hopeful, dreaming of that improbable moment when two souls so different might have brushed past each other and left a mark, however faint. Because some stories don't need proof to live in us, don't need a photograph or a witness to breathe. They take root in the quiet corners of our hearts, growing wild and free, fed by wonder and watered by what-ifs. They're the tales we carry like keepsakes, tucked into our pockets for the days when the world feels too small, too predictable, too gray. What do you say, my friends? Shall we keep chasing this ghost together, running after its shadow with the glee of kids chasing fireflies on a summer night? Shall we hold it close, this strange, shimmering song of the impossible, and let it play on repeat in our minds, each note a question, each chord a possibility?